Hey guys, Brendan Wren here, the Nashville Bassist, coming to you with a new video. So today I'm going to be talking about alternate tunings, but one alternate tuning in particular. So I see this question asked a lot on different forums, different pages, and I get asked this question quite a bit. What are some alternate tunings that I can use? What is a good alternate tuning? So I'm going to share with you the one that I use, and I use this tuning about 99% of the time, at least on 4-string bass. But it's one that I use. I experimented with it for a little while in the studio and some different things, and just eventually I just got to where I felt like this tuning worked for me pretty much full time for what I'm doing, both studio and live. I really like this tuning, and there's some reasons why I chose this tuning and why I've stuck with it, and I'll get into those reasons as well. So I see a lot of people go back and forth on what they want to do and what they're looking for as far as tuning. You got some of those guys that want really low tunings for like some different metal type music and things like that. But more often than not, I see people that want to be able to have a low D. That seems to be kind of a low string or a low note that people want to have, is that low D. Mainly for drop D tunings. And that's both guitar players and bass players. They want to have that low D because it comes in handy so much. A lot of people obviously want that low B. And in my opinion, if you want a low B, you want like a low B, a low C, some of those notes. For me, I would say that it's probably better at that point to go with a 5-string. Unless you just really can't get your head around a 5-string bass, whether it be the feel or just the way that it's strung. If you can't get into a 5-string bass, then try to maybe experiment with 4-string and dropping it down. But if you're going to go that low, if you're going to go down to a C or a B, in my opinion, you should have a 5-string bass. They play a little bit different. They sound a little bit different, but most of them are going to be active. And I think if you're getting into those low notes or lower, you definitely want an active bass to be able to bring out those notes the way they should. I have 5-string basses. I love 5-string basses. I play them quite a bit, but I am more of a 5-string or 4-string guy. So when I was looking for a little bit of access to a couple lower notes, I started looking into alternate tunings. So like I said, the big one that seems to come up a lot is D, and a lot of people will play in drop D. Sometimes they'll have a couple basses to where one's in drop D all the time, and that's perfectly fine to do. Some people tune it down on the fly. That's fine to do if you want to do that. A lot of people are going to the drop D, I can't remember what it's called, the D tune, drop D tuner that you can put on your low string to drop that string down. Those are great as well, but here's my thought process on doing that. If you're wanting that low D for certain songs, let's say that the song is in drop D, your guitar player's playing in drop D. As a bass player, I kind of want to be able to play on my fretboard in my standard fingerings, my standard patterns and shapes and things like that. Because when you drop just the one string, you get that low D, but then it's different from the rest of your strings. So you're having to kind of adjust the way you play. And it's not a big adjustment. We've all done it. We all generally can do it. But it does change the dynamics of how you play, because now you've got one string that's lower than the others. The bottom 3 strings, or top 3 strings, however you want to look at it, you're playing them standard tuning, standard fingering, but now you're playing this lower string differently. So it just makes more sense to me to drop all those strings down. That way you get that low D, but then you can still play with the same shapes and patterns and fingerings, normal fingerings for your scales and stuff. So that makes more sense to me. So I was kind of like, well, let's just go ahead and drop the bass down a whole step. So that's the way that I tune virtually every 4-string that I have now, unless I just need to do standard tuning for some odd reason, which I really haven't come across. But all of my 4-strings, I now have tuned down a whole step. So instead of E, A, D, and G, we now have D, C, G, and F. And it just makes more sense to me because now I've got that low D if I need it. A lot of people say, well, you lose some access to some of the higher notes. Well, let's be honest. What's going to come in more handy? Having a couple lower notes in our bag, or having some of those really high notes? Most of the time as bass players, I would say 99.9% of the time, we're really not going to play with these two higher notes up here, these few higher notes. Generally, we're not going to, unless we're doing like a lot of soloing or something. Generally, we're not going to need those. And I feel like the trade-off of those to getting a couple lower notes, can you hear that? This thing is squeaky. I need to oil it or something. Anyway, the trade-off of getting those couple lower notes over losing a couple of the higher notes, I feel like is a great trade-off. I haven't missed any of those super high notes up here on the fretboard, personally. So it works for me. I like it. I like the way that it sounds. I like having that low D. Like I said, if you're going below that, just go ahead and try to get a 5-string. But for me, I really like this because I can essentially play standard patterns and shapes on my fretboard and standard fingerings, but everything's just kind of dropped down a whole step. So essentially, I'm playing everything up a whole step. So instead of my G being here, it's now here. And I've just kind of gotten used to that. So it's almost second nature now. I just know when they say this is in the key of G, I know this is where I'm going. And I can separate the two. I know this is an A position, but I do know that this is a G note now because of the way that I have my bass tuned. And it took me a little while to, get that to be second nature, but now it's just second nature. I just know it. The problem I could possibly see, I haven't really run into it, but the problem I could see is if you get so used to this being a G and you go back to a standard tuned bass, you may accidentally bobble that first note until you remember, oh, I'm in standard tuning again. But I think once it becomes second nature, it's not really going to be a problem. I haven't run into that problem if I've gone back to standard tuning. I just know now. One thing that I kind of did in the beginning was when they would say it's in the key of G, I'd be like, okay, my G's here. All right. But then I would just think, for my personal use, my personal sake, in my mind, I'd be like, okay, we're in the key of A, just so I could keep it in my mind that way. We're in the key of A. All right. So however you need to do it, but like I said, eventually it just becomes second nature. You know, it's like you just automatically know I'm in a different tuning, but I know this is a G, even though it's an A position, and it just kind of becomes second nature. But I feel like this is a really, really good tuning. Now, I learned this tuning. It's kind of I don't want to say it's a secret because alternate tunings aren't really a secret, but it's kind of a thing that a lot of studio guys do. And that I've come across, especially in the Nashville scene for a lot of different things. My favorite bass player is a bass player named Jimmy Lee Sloas. He's a session legend in Nashville. He's played on so many albums, most all of Keith Urban stuff, a lot of Carrie Underwood stuff. Just any album you've heard, he's probably touched it in some way at some point. Or any artist you've ever heard, he's probably at some point recorded on one of their albums. But I found him because I was listening to bass lines from different songs. I was listening to a lot of Keith Urban one day, and I was like, man, I really like this bass player. And I went out and I was like, who is this? I found out it was like Jimmy Lee Sloas. I was like, I love his playing and what he does. And his bass tone is just incredible. And the choices he makes as a player, it's like, why did he choose to do that? Why did he choose to do that? Why did he go higher here? Why did he go? Well, part of that was because the songs I was listening to, he was playing in this alternate tuning, and just kind of the places it forces him to go as a player and choices that it forces him or leads him to make. I really like his playing and his thought process. And then I was like listening to like some Carrie Underwood and some other things. I was like, man, I like this bass player. Who is that? Come to find out, it's Jimmy Lee again. So I just really got into this guy and what he was doing. And I didn't know that he was doing a lot of those tunings up front until I met a guy named Joey Canaday, who was another big bass player. He played for LeAnn Rimes, a big studio guy, but he's a little bit of a mentor of mine. I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with Joey. I wish I could have spent more time with him, but I did get invited out on some sessions to watch some sessions and see how they worked when I was really trying to get into the whole session world. And come to find out that Joey's mentor is Jimmy. So it was really cool how that lined up, just to see the influences from Jimmy to Joey and then from Joey to me. But this is where I kind of learned the whole drop tuning is from Joey. Like I said, it's not a secret, but a lot of people don't know it and a lot of people don't think about it or know about it. But like I said, a lot of studio guys use it, and some of the songs that I was really listening to that I really liked, come to find out that they were using this tuning, and it just opened up a whole new world for me as a bass player. So I feel like with this tuning, I feel like it allows the bass to sit a little more proper in its kind of tonal characteristics, in the mix to a degree. And there's reasons for that, and I won't go into all that. But I feel like it just lets the instrument breathe a little better, like it's naturally supposed to be in this tuning. And part of that, I think, is just kind of the tension on the strings and where you're playing. It just, the tension here is a little bit different from here, and it's not huge, but it's enough to make a difference. And I just feel like the different tension on the strings allows it to just maybe vibrate and just kind of, it sounds better. It sounds a little more woody. I feel like it just really allows the bass to sing. And like I said, it's minuscule, but it's enough to make a big difference, at least to my ears. So I really like this tuning. I feel like it just sits a little better with everything. And I like some of the places it forces me to go on the fretboard. I really like this tuning, and it's just become standard for me. I really, really enjoy it. I like having that open D, and then having the octave up here. And I play that a lot in the music that I play. The artist that I play for currently, he's signed with Curb Records in Nashville. I don't want to say most of his songs. It's not most of his songs, but a lot of his songs are in the key of A, which I'm playing up here in the B position. But then that second chord, my 4 chord, I now have this D, which is standard E position on a bass, but now I've got that open D to play with it, and I do that a lot. I like having that low note on that 4 chord in music. I feel like it just really amplifies what you're doing. So it's just really cool. I really like this tuning, and I think it could be a good tuning for a lot of you that are wanting that low D, whether you're playing a lot of drop D. Why not just tune the whole bass down? Get used to playing it that way. That way you can have everything standard fingerings up and down the fretboard. I just think it makes more sense personally. But definitely try this tuning. I think it could be a good one for you. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's not that bad, because if you're having to transpose on the fly, like I said, eventually it just becomes second nature. You just know that, this is a G and this is an F. You just know it. It's just instinctual now. But in the beginning, it's really not that hard as a bass player to transpose when you're especially if you're just transposing like a half step or a whole step. I think it's easier to do a whole step because, you've got your markers. Well, you're just moving down a whole marker and you just stay that way. Once you got the key in your head, Just think, okay, this is my one chord. Just forget about the key and just know this is my one chord and just play off of that, because you should know your different patterns and shapes on your fretboard anyway, and you should know your scales well enough. So once you get the key and you find the one chord, just forget about it. Forget about what key it's in at that point, and just go with what you know of your fretboard. That's the easiest way I can tell you. But like I said, I think this is a great tuning. I think if you're looking for some of those lower notes, this would be a great one for you. Like I said, if you're going lower than D, I would go for a 5-string personally. Um, but if you just really want to stick with a 4, you can obviously do even lower than D. But I personally wouldn't go any lower than D on a 4-string. But that's just my opinion and just my experience. Now, you may ask, what do I need to do to my bass to do alternate tunings? Well, for this particular tuning, there's really nothing much that I needed to do to my bass. In the beginning, I experimented with some heavier gauge strings. I went to, I guess it was like a 50 to 105, maybe. I think is what I went with initially. And it just felt a little too dark, and the strings felt a little too floppy. So I talked to my guy that does my bass setups whenever I do take them in. I do adjustments myself, but if I really need my bass set up, I take them to Corner Music in Nashville to a guy named Jeff Marple, one of the best in the business. He is one of the go-to guys in Nashville, and not just for Nashville players. People from out of town will come in or send their stuff to Jeff. He's fantastic. But I talked to him and he said, I really don't think you need to go with a heavier gauge string. He said, for that, I think you're going to be fine. Just go with your normal gauge, which I play 45 to 100s, which is just your standard gauge, your standard light gauge. So I stuck with this, and I was able to get my bass to Jeff the first time. And he did a little setup on it. It needed a little setup anyway, but essentially he, put the strings on, tuned it to the new tuning, and just made sure the intonation and the neck was where it was supposed to be, and that was it. And it's been great. There's no issues with anything. I'm not having really any buzzing issues, and this is more of a vintage bass. But I'm not having any buzzing issues or anything like that. It's worked out great. So you can stay with a standard gauge string and do this particular tuning. Absolutely 100%. It's worked great for me, and I love it. So anyway, if you had a question about that, if you needed to do something special to your bass, not really. You can stay with the standard gauge. Just, put the strings on, tune it to what you're tuning, and then make sure you adjust the neck properly however you want the neck. Now, I like my strings as close to my fretboard as I can get without getting any buzz and stuff like that, obviously. And it's been great for me to stay with the standard gauge and be able to use this tuning. So that's it for today's video, guys. I hope this was a help. I hope maybe you'll try out this tuning and it'll work for you. Like I said, I think it just really opens up the instrument so much and what I can do as a bass player. I feel like I've even though I've made just a minimal adjustment, I feel like it's really opened up what I can do as a player, and I really like the way that it's kind of changed and forced me to play along the neck of the bass. So that's it, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned for some more content, and we'll see you guys later.